I mean, I'm pretty annoyed that the Prime Minister is reverting to outright lies.
Well, that's a big thing to say.
No. Outright lies.
Keir Starmer didn't see this one coming. On live TV, Nigel Farage ripped straight through Starmer's carefully crafted lies, exposing how he secretly backed the UK surrendering the Chagos Islands and quietly folded under pressure from Donald Trump's tariffs. Keir Starmer wasn't even in the room and still got obliterated. But what exactly did Farage reveal? And why did it leave Starmer hiding his face? In this video, let's know about the whole story.
GB News, huge concern about these tariffs. Were they avoidable?
Well, he said he'd put tariffs on. He was elected to do that. And of course, he's put us in the lower tier, the lowest tier. Interestingly, EU 20%, UK 10%. By the way, I'm not pretending 10% is good.
No.
It's just less bad than it would have been without Brexit.
It's all down to you then, because you took
Well,
the EU.
it's something that most of the commentariat can't really see.
Do we owe you a thank you then, Nigel Farage, for getting us out of the European Union and avoiding these tariffs 9 years later?
Well, but I think we should go much further than that. I can tell you this. I sat down face to face with Trump in 2017. He said, we want to do a deal with you guys. I want to show the world I believe in trade if it's fair, if it's right, if it's good for both sides. But of course, we didn't do a deal. Why? Because the Conservatives didn't take us out of the European Union. We went through the whole of 2017, 2018, 2019, and on it went. And by the time we finally left the European Union, frankly, it was all a bit too late. We did, however, do a lot of negotiation. 2/3 of a deal is there on the table. And it was really interesting to hear Jonathan Reynolds this morning. Because on the one hand, you've got Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union saying, we're going to retaliate. And Jonathan Reynolds saying, no, we're not going to retaliate. We're going to look to ways, not just to erase tariffs, but to go further towards a trade.
This should have been Britain's economic lifeline. A face-to-face commitment from the most pro-UK American president in decades. But Starmer's class didn't just say no. They sabotaged it. They chose EU alignment over economic independence. They preferred bureaucratic slavery in Brussels over a custom-made US trade deal. This wasn't diplomatic incompetence, it was ideological suicide. Starmer and his globalist clique thought that obeying EU rules was a badge of maturity, while Trump was too uncivilized to be taken seriously. Well, guess what? That mannerless president offered Britain a deal that would have saved Britons from the inflationary death spiral they are choking in. Starmer's answer? Delay, deflect, destroy. Then pretend none of it happened. And now he wants to reset the relationship with the US, as if we forgot he mocked the man who offered the deal in the first place. That's why Farage said Starmer is dragging the UK back to the EU.
And it strikes me that you're here today because in 2019 Boris Johnson targeted this area because he believed that there was a sentiment to get Brexit done.
Yeah.
6 years later, we heard yesterday that Labour is actually considering allowing ECJ oversight of agricultural goods. What message does that really send to what is traditional Brexit heartlands in lots of ways?
Yeah, I mean, Starmer will oversee record numbers of illegals crossing the Channel. Starmer will oversee legal migration still running at huge numbers, although the net might be a bit lower because so many people are leaving. Clearly, as far as the EU is concerned, he's creeping back in little bit by little bit by little bit. But it's bigger than that. I just don't think I don't see any malice in him or anything like that. He's a perfectly nice bloke. I just don't think when he speaks or just the way he performs, just doesn't connect with ordinary.
However, Farage also pointed out Labour and Starmer's hypocrisy.
Deal, and it's very interesting for a Labour government, led by a Prime Minister who wanted a second referendum. They're now actually behaving a bit more like Brexiteers. Fascinating.
Using the powers that Brexit gave them, because it's on them.
Using the powers Brexit gave them on this, and also on foreign policy. When the reason, we can come to Ukraine, and I'm, by the way, very, very cautious about sending British troops on the ground in Ukraine for an undetermined period of time. But even acting as he's trying to do as the bridge between the European members of NATO and America, Brexit has benefited.
You almost have to admire the audacity. Keir Starmer, who fought tooth and nail to reverse Brexit, is now parading around pretending he is a sovereign first statesman. But this isn't patriotism, it's a drama. It's the same man who wanted a second referendum, who called Brexit voters misled and misinformed, now quoting Brexit powers like they are sacred scripture.
Most of the conflict with the UK being outside of the UK arises insofar as the UK wants to diverge and do different things to the rest of our EU partners. Obviously, the more we share values, the more we share a future together, the less the conflict. And actually, different ways of solving problems are become available. You know, actually, we don't want to diverge. We don't want to lower standards. We don't want to rip up environmental standards, working standards for people at work, food standards, and all the rest of it.
Campaigning for a public vote. It's right that Parliament has the first say. It's right that Parliament has the first say. But if we need to break the impasse, our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option.
Let's be clear, Starmer doesn't believe in Brexit. He believes in polling, and right now it tells him nationalism sells. So he wraps himself in the Union Jack while dreaming of Davos. He's not defending Britain's borders, he's defending his brand. This is the same cynical flip-flop we saw on immigration, on net zero, on defence spending. Everything he says is reactive, everything is cosmetic, and Farage is the one ripping that mask clean off. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now.
Isn't it? Have you talked to the White House? Are they using you as a back channel? We thought that might happen when he came in, and right now be quite helpful.
What's really interesting is that in the first term, I spoke to the White House quite a lot. In this term, I haven't, because I can't be seen to interfere unless the government wants me to be useful or to be helpful. I have said many times, I don't just know the president, I know half the cabinet.
And you've told Keir Starmer that on the floor of the House. You offered it, buying privately.
I've done it many times. They're choosing to go their own route, and fine, perhaps they're better qualified than me to do it. I just think that, you know, when it comes to the people holding the big key jobs in economics, I just happen to know these people, happen to be friendly with these people. Look, I repeat the offer. If the government wants me to help, I would help, and I would do it. Even though they're a Labour government, I do it in...
This is where Starmer's pettiness becomes dangerous. Farage wasn't asking for a job. He wasn't asking for glory. He was offering to broker real diplomatic access, something no Labour staffer can do, and Starmer rejected it. Why? Because Farage will get the credit. This isn't just pride. It's a middle-class ego trip at the expense of every British business now choking on US tariffs. While Starmer plays Whitehall chess with a smug grin, Farage is holding the keys to real transatlantic negotiation. And the British economy, its collateral damage in Starmer's vanity war. Then Farage pointed out Starmer's outright lies.
Vote?
I mean, I'm pretty annoyed that the Prime Minister is reverting to outright lies.
Well, that's a big thing to say.
No. Outright lies, saying that reform fawned over Putin. I've never heard such rubbish.
Well, that's your remark, saying he's
No. I said in one sentence 12 years ago that I respected him as a leader, but didn't like him as a person and wouldn't live in...
Strong leader, you said, didn't you?
Yeah, well, there's no questions of what he is. That's why he's been there.
But that's fawning for them, isn't it?
It's almost as if there's no nuance of any kind allowed. You know, has Putin been a successful Russian politician? Well, up until the invasion of Ukraine, arguably yes. I've never liked the guy. We deplore the invasion. The fact the Prime Minister is sinking to these depths, I think shows you, despite what's happening on the international stage, domestically, this government's become very unpopular very, very quickly. And my nervousness is this. Back in the early 1950s, there was a settlement to end the Korean War. Korea divided north and south with the divide, and the Americans, us to some extent, but the Americans said they'd put an army in to maintain the peace. 72 years later, there are still 24,000 American troops in Korea. We went into Afghanistan in 2001. Little did we know we'd be there for 20 years. The British Army has been diminished since 2010. It's the smallest it's been for centuries. For every one man in the front line or woman, you need two behind, reserves, etc. So one, I'm worried the army isn't big enough, and two, I want the Prime Minister to tell me, if we send troops in, for how long?
This is political rot at its core. Starmer didn't just take a quote out of context. He took a 12-year-old remark, sliced off the real meaning, and broadcast it as proof that Farage is pro-Putin. This is Soviet-level propaganda. The truth? Farage said Putin was a strong leader, not a good man, not a friend, not someone to admire, just strong. And guess what? He was right. Putin held Russia together through brute force. That's not praise, that's reality. But Starmer doesn't care, because in his eyes, smearing opponents is easier than solving problems. It's all projection. Starmer is calling others Putin's puppets while he signs blank checks to prolong a war with no clear objective. The man who couldn't even call Trump's Ukraine remarks wrong has the nerve to call Farage soft on Russia. Hypocrisy on stilts. Then Nigel Farage came to Starmer's betrayal of Britain by giving up the Chagos Islands.
A few other areas too. Chagos Islands, that deal has now been approved by the White House, we think, from government source.
Yeah, the reason the Americans have approved it is because we've said to them, don't worry guys, we'll pay for all of it. The Americans will not contribute a penny.
And that bill is how much again?
So nobody tells the truth on this because nobody understands simple arithmetic. The deal of 90 million a year for 99 years, that's pretty much uncontested, right? Even government doesn't fight back against that. 90 million pounds a year for 99 years linked to inflation. If inflation runs at 3%, and given the way compounding works, that would be a repayment of 52 billion pounds. And frankly, right now, well, when you've taken away the winter fuel allowance, when you're threatening family farms, when the economy and the borrowing figures are in dire trouble, and when you're promising to increase the size of defence spending,
yes,
why risk this money?
And it's hard to sell, I think, when that figure, they do challenge 90 million a year. We'll see where that ends up, but it'll be a lot of...
Well, I think everyone accepts it's 9 billion.
This isn't just financial negligence, it's geopolitical madness. Starmer gave away one of Britain's last strategic territories, paid billions to do it, and handed China an opportunity to spy on the US base at Diego Garcia, all so he could clap along at the UN. Think about that. He gave up a Western military foothold in the Indian Ocean, paid to hand it over, and called it justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've just returned hot foot from a very full Mar-a-Lago. And I've spoken to several members, senior administrators especially, of the incoming administration who will be in the White House in 32 days' time. Let me assure you, there is very deep disquiet amongst all of them as to what this may mean for the long-term future of Diego Garcia and whether such deal would hold, given the precedent of the deal break over Hong Kong. They also can't understand why we would surrender the sovereignty of these islands on an advisory judgment from a pretty obscure court. But this is about sovereignty. Can we please, if we respect the sovereignty of Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands on the basis it's what the people want, can we have a referendum of all of the eligible Chagosians and let them decide what the future sovereignty?
This is what post-nationalism looks like, sacrificing national interest for abstract international applause. And worse, Starmer didn't even negotiate for American support. Then Farage talked about the grooming gang scandal.
Yes, and the rape gangs, the Tories are leading their way on a bit more now. I know you've been pushing very hard.
Rape gangs, they covered it up whilst they were in power.
And now they're pushing for a national inquiry with the votes in the House of Commons. Rupert Lowe's got a privately funded one.
No. Look, we took a private prosecution out against the Manchester attackers on the basis of two-tier justice. It worked. CPS then acted. I challenged the government to hold a national inquiry into the rape gangs. They responded by giving us 5 separate inquiries. There's no point me holding an inquiry into this or Rupert Lowe holding an inquiry into this unless it has statutory powers. Yes, of course the rape victims need to be heard. But what is shocking about this isn't just the abuse of the young women, it's the extent of the cover-up. And without statutory powers, We ain't going to get there. So yes, the Tories are playing catch up with us on virtually everything, having themselves in office done the opposite. And what they don't understand is that the breach of trust with them, with about half their voters from 2019, is so great, it isn't going to return.
This is where it goes from embarrassing to unforgivable. Thousands of victims, years of systematic abuse, councils and officials who look the other way. And what does Starmer offer? Token local inquiries with no power to compel testimony, no statutory authority, no accountability. Why? Because the truth is politically inconvenient, because Labour councils ran the cover-ups, because Starmer's priority isn't justice, it's a PR containment. Farage says it plainly. This isn't just abuse, it's institutional betrayal. The victims don't just need sympathy, they need the truth under oath. But Starmer's government would rather let survivors rot than let sunlight in, and that alone should disqualify him from power. Do you think Keir Starmer is an outright liar who can lie about everything to save his face? Isn't it true that after this, Starmer cannot be trusted and this man becomes incompetent to be the British Prime Minister any longer? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on what you would say if you confronted Starmer. Would you make him embarrassed for what he is doing with the UK? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.